Hi, I'm Carl Nattenstead, founder of Kid Builders. Welcome to the how-to video for CO2 dragsters. Today I'm going to show you how to build a CO2 dragster in 4 easy steps. Okay, let's get started with step 1. For step 1, we're going to need 4 components. We need a rag for wiping off excess glue. We need our glue. We need a small nose cone. And we need the dragster body. First, we're going to glue the nose cone into the dragster body. We'll put a small bit of glue into the tip of the dragster body, and then insert the nose cone. Press it firmly into the gap. Don't worry if there's excess glue on the car body. When it dries, you can barely see it. You can also wipe off the excess with your rag. Now we're finished with step 1. Encourage the kids to put their car body aside and not to touch it for fear that they might knock the nose cone out. Step 2. For step 2, we're going to need 7 components. The rag, our handy glue, a small Phillips head screwdriver, our car body from step 1, 4 small Phillips head screws, 4 wheel axle components, and 2 small mounting tabs. We start by taking our screwdriver and all of the little wood pieces and poking out the holes in the pieces. We poke out all the holes in all of our pieces. One second here. This can also be done using a pencil or sometimes even just your fingers. And all the little pieces are just waste. So push those aside, throw those into the garbage can. Now we're going to put together a wheel assembly. Now that we've punched out all the holes, we're going to put together the axle assembly. We simply take one of the oval pieces and we put it onto one of the rectangular pieces. We do that by taking a little rectangular slot and slipping it over the tab, like so. Then we take another oval piece and we slip it over the tab on the opposite side. We push it together like that and we have a completed wheel assembly. Now, one thing we want to be sure of is that we have the holes for the axle on the proper side of the mounting bracket. The holes should be on the side of the mounting bracket that is straight and flat. A simple test to make sure you have it put together correctly is to take the assembly, put it up to your eye, and you should be able to look right through the holes nice and clear. There should be nothing in the way of the holes. In this way, you'll ensure that you've put together the wheel assemblies properly. Now that we have 2 wheel assemblies, let's put some glue on them to help hold them together. The simple way to glue them is to put a small dab of glue in the corners of the assembly, like so. Then flip it over, another one in the corner, another one in the corner. If you have excess glue in the corner, simply take the tip of your finger, wipe it through, wipe it off on the rag, and now you should have a nice clean glue line in each corner of the wheel assembly. Do that for both assemblies. Now we have 2 wheel assemblies. Now we're going to mount the wheel assemblies onto the body. A couple things we want to make sure of here. One, we want to put a small amount of glue into the slot on the car body. Don't put too much, but just enough to be sure and hold the wheel assembly in place. Then we want to take our wheel assemblies and put them into the slots. We should be sure that the holes on the wheel assemblies are facing front toward the nose. They simply snap down into the assembly. One in the front and one in the rear. Again, the rear assembly, the holes should be facing toward the front of the car, toward the nose cone. Again, we can apply our simple test to make sure that we have it correct by looking through the axle holes, and we should be able to see clearly out the other axle hole. Now we have a nearly complete car body. The next step is to take the small screws and screw them into the holes in the wheel assemblies. This can be a challenging step for students. I like to encourage students to work in groups. One student can hold the car while the other student uses the screwdriver. Using our fingers, we can start the screw just a little bit, then put the screwdriver in and screw down the screw. Now, if students are having trouble with this operation, you can work in teams. While one student's holding the car, the instructor can come by, put their hand on top of the screwdriver, and just ask the student to turn the screwdriver. In this way, they can start to learn how a screwdriver works. Now that you've seen one, I'm going to screw in the other 3 screws, and then we'll be ready for step 3. Now that we've got all 4 screws in the car body, our car body is complete for step 2 and ready for step 3. In step 3, we need 5 components. Our car body that we just finished in step 2, the 2 pieces that hold on the CO2 cartridge, our glue, and our trusty rag. To start, we take our car body and the first piece of the CO2 holder, and we slip it into the back, matching up the slots in the 2 pieces. It's very important that we push it in all the way so that the tabs on the back are flush. We want all 4 tabs on the back to be flush. The simple test is to push it down on the table and they should all be together. Now we should have 4 tabs on the back. We take our little retaining circle, and you'll notice that 2 of the gaps are larger and 2 are smaller. That corresponds to the 2 wider gaps on the top and bottom and the 2 smaller tabs on the side pieces. Simply snap it onto the 4 tabs in the back of the car. Once you have it snapped on, take your glue and put a small dab of glue at each joining area. Again, if you have significant excess glue, use your finger and wipe it off. It doesn't take much glue to hold this part together. Now we're done with step 3 and ready to move on to step 4. In step 4, we need 5 components. Our completed car body from step 3, a small set of 4 axle bushings, 2 thin front tires, 2 axles, and 2 fat slicks for the back tires. We start by taking our 4 bushings and detaching them from the holder by simply twisting them around in circles until they are detached. I want to detach all 4 bushings so that we can insert them into the car body. The remaining piece is just garbage. Now we take our car body, and at each of the axle assembly areas we insert one bushing. The bushing goes in from the outside and pushes in until it's flush with the side of the wood. Sometimes the students will have a little trouble with this exercise and will need a small bit of assistance from the instructor. Each hole gets a bushing. When all the bushings are in, we're ready to start assembling the axles and wheels. Let's do the rear slicks first. Take an axle and one of the slicks, insert the axle into the hole, and wiggle a little bit to get it in. Then turn over the axle, push down firmly on the wheel until it goes fully on the axle. Now, take the completed wheel and axle, slip it through the rear axle holder of the car, through the bushings, and out the bushing on the other side. At this point, you can see why it was important to be sure that we had the holes in the axle assemble pointing toward the front of the car, leaving a clear line of sight for the axle to pass through the car body. Now take the second wheel and put it on the axle on the opposite side. Again, you may need to put the wheel down onto the table and push down firmly to get the wheel fully on the axle. Make sure you don't over tighten the wheels. You want to be sure that they still spin smooth and don't provide a lot of friction for the car. Now we're ready for the front wheels. The front wheels can be a little bit more difficult to put on the axle because they're smaller and have a little less area to push. Take a front wheel and an axle, insert the axle into the wheel. Again, put the axle on the table, push down firmly on the wheel such that it slides onto the axle. Now take the axle and assembled wheel, put it through the bushing in the front wheel assembly, out through the opposite side bushing, put the opposite side wheel onto the axle. Again, you may want to use a table and push down firmly on the axle in order to get the wheel fully on the axle. Last, take both thumbs, put on one wheel, 2 fingers on the opposite side, and squeeze together, and the front wheels should snap on like so. Be sure you leave some room in the front wheels and that they spin freely and don't provide any friction for the car. Now we have a completed dragster and we're ready to insert the cartridge.